Please use the sharing tools found via the email icon at the top of articles. Copying articles to share with others is a breach of ft.com TNCS and copyright policy. Email licensing at ft.com to buy additional rights. Subscribers may share up to 10 or 20 articles per month using the gift article service. More information can be found at https://www.ft.com/tour. https://www.ft.com/content/4F046-A4C0-5A946-1D When a cargo ship arrived in Cuba from Caracas this week, with supplies to help the island rebuild after Hurricane Irma, it carried a typically warmed message from Nicolás Maduro, Venezuelan president. This modest help demonstrates our nation's civic and military union, it read. Communist Cuba is one of socialist Venezuela's few remaining allies. In return for subsidized oil and aid, Havana provides Caracas with doctors and intelligence operatives, a relationship that has long hurt the U.S. Venezuela can always count on Cubans being in the front line of militant solidarity, Raúl Castro, Cuba's president, said recently. Lately, though, U.S., European, and Latin American diplomats have courted Havana, hoping its close Caracas relationship means it could serve as a facilitator, rather than an obstacle, in encouraging a transition away from Mr. Maduro. His problems will probably reach a climax again soon, because Venezuela must repay bondholders $3.5 billion over the next 4 weeks, heightening a cash crunch that has slashed annual imports to $13 billion, an 80% drop in 5 years. After running street protests this year left more than 120 dead, the government is also likely to lose badly to the opposition in state governor elections on October 15. At some point the Maduro government will collapse. The questions are when, and under what circumstances, a negotiated exit, an internal coup, or default and chaos, said a European diplomat close to conversations with Venezuela and Cuba. The idea of Maduro seeking exile in Cuba has been discussed, although not yet. But the Cubans will eventually play a critical role. At some point the Maduro government will collapse. The questions are when, and under what circumstances, a negotiated exit, an internal coup, or default and chaos. European diplomat. Despite their ideological affinity, there are many reasons why Cuba might give up Venezuela. Aid is dwindling. Over the past 2 years, Caracas has slashed the 100,000 barrels per day of subsidized oil once sent to Havana by 40%. Cuba's political cost of supporting Mr. Maduro is also rising, even as U.S. policy and rhetoric hardens. Donald Trump, U.S. president, mentioned Venezuela as many times as North Korea in his maiden UN speech last month, and has similarly talked loosely about invasion. This week, his administration also expelled 15 Cuban diplomats from Washington after a series of mysterious sonic attacks on U.S. and Canadian diplomats in Havana. Unusually, the region is increasingly siding with the U.S. over Venezuela, instead of with Cuba, said Paul Hare, a former UK ambassador to Cuba. Venezuela has become a wedge issue. The backstory. Highlights from the FT archive on Venezuela's unfolding crisis. Venezuela's crisis in charts. FT View, sending a message to Maduro. Live in Caracas tips into chaos. Thug Nation, a broken revolution. How the Bolivarian bourgeoisie profits from crisis. Cuba's ability to broker a Venezuela deal is also widely accepted. Cuban agents are understood to control important military posts, so helping forestall an internal coup against Mr. Maduro. The all-powerful Constituent Assembly, installed by Mr. Maduro in August, is also a leaf taken out of Cuba's repressive playbook, in turn learned from the Soviet Union. Lastly, alongside other pro-Cuban cabinet members such as Cilia Flores, the First Lady, and Elias Jawa, Education Minister, Mr. Maduro recently appointed Erika Farias, an orthodox pro-Cuban socialist, as his chief of staff. The calculus in Havana seems to be that bolstering its already enormous influence over Caracas will improve its bargaining position with the Trump administration, suggested the weekly political risk report by Caracas Chronicles, a website. Venezuela is more and more a pawn in a chess game. Between outside powers. Venezuela is more and more a pawn in a chess game. Between outside powers. Caracas Chronicles website. Be that as it may, outside attempts to enlist Cuba's help have failed so far. Juan Manuel Santos, Colombia's president, traveled to Havana in July to seek its support for a regional diplomatic push to resolve Venezuela's crises. Luis Videgaray, Mexico's foreign minister, followed in August, reportedly offering subsidized Mexican oil as a substitute for Venezuelan crude. It's not just Colombia and Mexico. The U.S. has also quietly put pressure on Cuba to stand down on its Venezuelan support, Christopher Sabatini, international affairs lecturer at Columbia University, said. The problem is that what they all seek goes against Cuba's DNA of non-intervention. Cuba would never force Venezuela to agree to a mediated solution it did not want. Cuban medics. Share on Twitter, opens new window. Share on Facebook, opens new window. Share this chart. Another complication is Cuba's own problems. With Mr. Castro set to step down as president next February, Havana is preoccupied with internal succession and has clamped down on reform and dissent. Meanwhile, White House disorganization combined with the apparent subcontracting of U.S. Latin America policy to conservative Cuban-American lawmakers such as Marco Rubio, the Florida senator, makes a U.S. quid pro quo for Cuban support unlikely. Cuba has the wherewithal to help by offering Maduro exile and anyone else he takes with him. That's a price perhaps worth paying if it helps Venezuela transition, said Jose Cardenas, a former State Department official who supports Mr. Trump's harsher Cuba policy. The problem is, what's the incentive for the Cubans to do so? And could they really be bought off? The short answer is, perhaps, just not yet. The Cubans won't jump horse in Venezuela until another one is available, said one U.S. official. Everyone has tried. But nobody is saying they will, if ever.